Hey everybody, Bob Chick back with another edition of the Voice of Bodybuilding. We've been off for about a week, so we are back in grand fashion. And of course, it wouldn't be another new edition without the one, the only, the Hall of Famer, Sugar Shawn Ray. What's up, buddy?
All right, I'm not back from Italy, but I am going to Aruba coming up very shortly. Celebrate my sister's 61st birthday. Did you come back speaking Italian, Paisan?
Listen, Italy was in fine form with the Rimini Festival, which is now almost as big as FIBO, if not as big. It
Wow.
was absolutely huge. Panada knocked it out of the park with Ronnie and Phil doing literally thousands of autographs, brother. The line for Ronnie Coleman to this day, it's the most enduring thing you've ever seen because here's Ronnie, and of course we knew him back in his heyday and literally stood on stage with him, but in a wheelchair. It doesn't get around very well, obviously, without the wheelchair, but the fans don't care. Sean, there was 1,000 people in line every single day we were there to get an autograph from Ronnie Coleman.
Yeah, I think people have a fonder appreciation for what you do or what you did in review. When you look back at what Ronnie Coleman did, only one other person did it, and that was Lee Haney. The difference is that I think Ronnie Coleman's competition was stiffer than Lee Haney's.
Yeah,
Lee
absolutely.
Haney's Lee Haney had a great run for his era, but there was just Lee Haney, and then there was everyone else. Ronnie, we threw everything but the kitchen sink at Ronnie Coleman. I mean,
Yeah, right.
Flex Wheeler, Kevin Levrone, Nasser El Somebody. I mean, he
Yeah,
literally started at the back of the pack, unlike Lee Haney, who started at the front. Lee Haney, his first Olympia was third. Ronnie's was last, and he
yeah.
stayed kind of floundering around for about 5 years before he hit his stride. And the further away we get from those memories, um, you see somebody like that, you really have appreciation. It's like one of the crown jewels of our sport. Anybody that has a chance to go out, get a picture, shake his hand, get the autograph. You know, it's an infinite amount of time, or I should say, a finite amount of time that we can celebrate our crown jewels. I remember Muhammad Ali was received very much the same way
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Ronnie is being received today. And of course, Muhammad had the cognitive issues, but everyone was hanging on to those memories of what he accomplished during that time. And even kids that weren't around to watch what Ronnie did through the internet, through YouTube, they go back and they're just blown away. So when you get a chance to see Ronnie in person, I mean, there's a lot of nostalgia that goes around Ronnie Coleman, and Ronnie doesn't even realize his inability to get around and be mobile. I mean, he just embraces the love. I think it keeps him going. I mean,
No,
it's hard enough to go to the airport with a stub toe. This guy's in a wheelchair with steel
he
rods in
uh
his back and
he, he
stuff.
still loves the fans, Sean. I mean, he'll stay until every last fan gets what they came for.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, some of the fans didn't get what they came for because they had 2,000 shirts printed up and they were gone by day 3. So the day 4 people, we apologize, but there was nothing we could do. And all you can do is guess. We weren't expecting that type of a outcome. But we had a seminar there with Ronnie and Phil, and Phil was very well received also. So we got 15 Sandow's just between these two guys, two of the all-time greats. And we had a crowd of about 2,000 people out there to listen, even though half of them probably couldn't understand the word we were saying.
Yeah.
But
Right.
unfortunately, I got to work on my Italian a little bit more, bro, so we can skip the translators in there. But listen, it
Well,
was a great event. Mhm.
the last time I was there in Rimini, Bob, you were just wet behind the ears. 1989. I celebrated my birthday there with Ronnie with Barry DeMay.
Yeah,
Barry had just tore his pec,
yeah, that's right.
and I was coming from a tour from Russia, USA versus Russia. I was guest posting out there in Moscow, and we came over to Italy for the Rimini show for the Olympia in 1989. Lee Haney won. I believe Labrada was second. I think Vince Taylor was third that year, if I'm
And
not mistaken.
Rich Gasperi, I believe,
Yes.
was fourth.
Yeah, and Rich went over there real early because he's Italian. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna go over there, my people, blah blah blah, and it was a different experience. I think he actually had a leg press machine shipped to Italy
he did
specifically
actually. Yeah.
specifically so he could train for that show. But I was totally lit, man. It was my birthday. I was drunk in the audience with the fans. I had a couple of drinks, and I just thought the Olympia return for me would be a million miles away. I came off a 13th place in the 88 Olympia. I was watching the 89 Olympia, and I'm thinking, how in the hell am I ever going to get back on that stage? Because everything was magnified through me being a little bit buzzed. Barry May kept giving me drinks for my birthday. And I literally,
Right.
a switch went off while I watched those guys. on my birthday in '89, and that's when they created the 1990 Pro Ironman. I came back and I regained my confidence. Got first place at that show in February, and I moved all the way up to third in 1990 at the Olympia. So, I mean, sometimes you have to be close to the action to realize how far away it is, and then just go about taking one step at a time, and then you realize your potential because you have to have that belief in yourself. That was the last time I was in Rimini.
Well, Rich Gasperi, actually, that we were talking about, him, was there with us, spending some of the time at the Panada booth, and he had his own booth. He's going to be relaunching some of his products out in Italy. So Rich was there on hand to relive some of these great moments and all that. And it's funny because me and Rich got talking, and I'm firmly convinced that if the 1989, this is how interesting history gets with just one small little thing that changes history forever. If the '89 Olympia is not in Rimini and is in the States on a different date, I might have turned pro in '89 instead of 2000. Here's why, Shawn. So at the '89 USA, I take second to Morant. Morant then loses the overall to Eddie Robinson, which most people know back then, you had to win the overall. So me and Morant are going to go to the next show. Well, the next show happened to be on the same date as the Olympia. So all the judges that were there at the USA were over in Rimini. So they had a secondary judging crew that was in there who obviously saw it a little bit differently than the first one. I thought I had Morant easily at the North Americans. He ended up beating me there and got his pro card there. So it just goes to show you, Shawn, how interesting that would have been if I would have turned pro 11 years earlier, right?
Yeah. Well, look, we give you the Ironman award for hanging around and getting the job done. A lot of guys fell off. Matt Mendenhall, Roy Littlemeyer, they gave up.
True that, listen, I'll wear that as a badge of honor, but listen, that's history, and that's the way it goes sometimes. But so big hats off and a big props to Panada, our host sponsor here at the VOB, and obviously I'm very well connected with Panada worldwide, brother. It's just blown up. They're actually working on a secondary warehouse now and a whole other facility because they've got to literally double production. So it's a good and a bad problem to have all at the same time. We also got to give a big shout out to our good friends at Mutant, especially Jim McMahon, our fearless leader. Look what I got in the mail the other day, Shawn. I got the Mutant box. I know you probably got one of these, bro. Look at this.
Oh yeah, that's it.
How cool is that? So I got the hat, the shaker, and the new Mind FK. You can fill in the blanks there.
Yes.
By the way, thanks to the marketing department for that one. We can't actually, we can't put it out, but this is a family show. But
well, at the same time, Bob, we got to get you this too. I'll get this in the mail to you. The new thermogenic kill switch fat burner.
Could use some of that.
This is what I've been using when I go swimming in the morning. I'm swimming these days for some exercise. We got a couple flavors for you. So
yeah, so we got both of these new brand new products. The Mind FK, it's a pre-workout, and of course, Kill Switch, a great fat burner. So, but big hats off, and always we appreciate Jim McMahon and what he does. Not just for Mutant, not just for the company, but for the sport itself. Mutant sponsors a lot of shows throughout the years. He was very prominent at the Arnold this year. He'll be back at the Olympia. And speaking of people back, Shawn, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention brand new sponsor that we have. And it's not new only in the fact that, hey, look at that. Egg Whites International, our good buddy Matt, right? From your neck of the woods out there in Orange County.
They sponsored the charity golf tournament we did back in the day for Chop
That's right.
Hospital. Good people.
Well, Mac tutored me in golf for all the years I lived in California. So got me down to about a 6'8" handicap, which ain't bad for a big old bodybuilder. But I want to welcome back Mac and Egg Whites International because those egg whites. Are you eating your egg whites, Shawn? That's what I want to know.
Yes, and now that he's back on the scene, I'm going to definitely hit him up. And while we're at it, Bob, I got you something.
Oh, what'd you get me? Come on.
You never get me anything, Bob. But I got you something, bro. I got you the new Shawn Ray shirt.
Hey! Wow, look at that.
Yeah, you like that?
Who the freak is Shawn Ray?
Dude, this is going to help take you to the next level.
All right.
If you walk around with my face on your shirt.
So I'm going to get a shirt that says, I don't know who the freak Shawn Ray is, but I'm Bob Chick, the voice of bodybuilding. So.
That's right. It's going to brighten your day.
Bro, I like that. It's a nice looking shirt.
I'm going to try one more time, Bob, and I know you're going to have an excuse.
Here we
But
go.
at some point, you're going to have to give in. Shawn Hawaiian Classic is coming November the 16th to Hawaii. Pro-Am, Pro Bikini, Pro Men's Physique, all the NPC divisions,
Hmm.
and maybe the voice of bodybuilding at the mic for the IFBB Pro division.
Maybe I can.
You're on the
I'm
spot,
due
bro.
for a return,
November
bro.
16th.
It's been a few years, so.
November the 16th. All
All
right,
right.
let's get down to business.
Well, speaking of shows, and yes, we will get down to business. This was a very interesting weekend. There's a lot going on all across the globe in the world of bodybuilding, but all eyes were on Toronto for a few different reasons. So, Ron Hache, his wife, his crew out there does a fantastic job. This has got to be, geez, I don't know, what, the 12th, 13th year, I think, of Toronto?
Yeah,
I did it for
it's been a
10
minute. Yeah.
before COVID hit. So, yeah, it's probably about 13 years. But the Toronto Pro Super Show is on in full effect, another Olympia qualifying event. And of course, we're going to focus on the men's open. So we'll work our way up as we go. So in fifth place, I see Hassan Mustafa made his triumphant return to the ring, but this was not the Mustafa that needed to show up to contend for the title, bro.
Yeah, heavy in the quads, always. He's always quad heavy. And that's an area that, again, he's going to have to bring that down. I mean, I don't know what to tell the guy. Maybe just do leg extensions or stay away from the squats and the leg press. It's hard to tell someone to back off when it comes to legs, but the legs and then the water retention, the thicker skin,
Yeah.
it's something that he's been battling since he got to the pros in terms of trying to lean out properly. And you know what? The size thing isn't working. Then you might as well try something different. You might as well try to up the cardio, bring the cards down, and just come in smaller. I just think in certain areas of his physique are outstanding, but they're
Yeah.
overpowering. They're overpowering. He's got to get the condition right.
Well, he looks very stumpy on stage. He's
Something's
not
the
the
word.
tallest guy in the world, but he's very thickly muscled, which is good and bad at the same time. Like you said, you need separation that's going to separate you on stage from the other people. When you're just one big ball of muscle, it doesn't really come across that well on stage.
Yeah, we've been saying it for a while. I know for a
Yeah.
bodybuilder, it's hard to hear. But you know what? If it's not working, then you got to do some drastic stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, you keep doing what you're doing and it's not working, you might have to start doing something totally different.
Well, he's had a few different trainers I know over the last few years, but that hasn't been the biggest problem. I know he's ended up in the hospital either before or after a few of those shows, and that's really, you're taking things into your own hands. That's probably not the smartest thing to do when it comes to bodybuilding and longevity. If you are cutting it that close, that listen, accidents happen. I mean, everybody's had some instance somewhere where you weren't feeling too good, or maybe you got a little too dehydrated. But this is multiple times, and I'm not saying anything happened here, and I hope certainly not. But anytime you're dancing that close to the edge, bro, nothing good's going to come out of it.
No, and sometimes you're gonna have to do something different. The older we get, the harder it is to accept change and do something different. It's not that he needs another coach; he doesn't need another trainer. I think he needs to just reevaluate where he thinks he's gonna feel good at, because being bigger and not being rewarded isn't a good feeling. We know what it's like to be standing there and be overlooked, and we replay in our head how much work and how much time we sacrifice. So streamline it. What do you have to lose to streamline the whole look and
Well, here
change the type of
let's
training?
put you to the test. So you're Coach Shawn, and you just got Mustafa. What advices do you give him specifically?
I'm gonna up the repetitions. I'm
Okay.
gonna incorporate a lot of giant sets. I'm gonna have him do more cardio. I'm gonna have him do cardio twice a day. Fasted cardio in the morning for 45 minutes, cardio in the evening for 45 minutes. We're gonna do that at the beginning of our prep, not at the end of our prep. I don't want the guy gassing out on cardio 2 or 3 weeks before the show. I want him doing it way out. I want him leaning down. So if anything, we could build up a little bit towards the show. But I need to get him underneath the competition weight that he competed at in Toronto, bring him all the way down, and have him maybe build up a little bit towards the show. I guarantee he's never done that before. But he's going to have to lose some muscle to gain some muscle. The idea is to try to get the detail. Come down, train closer to your competition weight, a lot further out, so you're not suffering
I
the
got you.
last few weeks.
So hypothetically, I don't know his weight at all, but let's just say he was 245 on stage. Where would you have him be coming in?
I'd like to see this guy at least 10, 15 pounds lighter. It worked for Ronnie Coleman circa 2001 when
Yeah.
he did the Arnold Classic. When Ronnie came in light at the Arnold Classic in '01, he looked like an athlete. All the rest, he looked like a monster, kind of a beast.
Right.
But he looked like he can go out and run a 100-yard dash or swim a couple laps. I'd like to see Muhammad Mustafa leaner, so a leaner look might be favorable and probably healthier.
All right. Well, he lands in sixth place, I believe it was. I think I said fifth earlier, but just out of that top five, it was actually Tim Budesheim placing fifth. Now, we've seen Tim competing throughout the year, and he's very consistent. He actually seemed to have gotten a little bit better this show. There's nothing outstanding. There's also nothing outstandingly bad. That can work for you or against you at some shows where there's no real highlight, so to say, but he's a very good bodybuilder, Shawn. I'm just not
Yeah,
sure there's anything he can do at this point other than to keep going.
or pick a different show. You got sometimes picking the right show. Good, not great, nothing special, nothing outstanding, but he's good. So he's gonna have to figure out a way to stand out. I think I called the Hassan Muhammad Mustafa. Remember Muhammad Mustafa from
Well,
back in the day?
Mustafa's the last name, so you're either way
Oh,
you got
okay.
him.
Okay, there's a couple of those Muhammads out there.
Right?
Um, but yeah, I mean, when you're just good, you can kind of coast your way into some of these shows. I remember Martin Fitzwater looked good, and now he's
Yeah.
coming into his peak, and he's starting to look, on the verge of great if he nails it. This is a guy that's got to do a few more shows or pick the right show to stand out a little bit more.
I mean, he's got a lot of muscle. He gets in good condition. He was actually in better condition this show. Like you said, it's just literally a matter of who you're standing next to at any one given time as to what the talent marks that whether you do better or whether you do worse. But he's a very good bodybuilder. I hope he continues to compete and move on. He's a guy that I can see getting better as he goes. He does seem to have a physique that to withstand. He's not very erratic. Like he's very consistent with his showings.
Yeah, I'd like to see him go on to Texas. It's not that far away. It's coming up quick.
No, it's around the corner. But all right, that's fifth place, Tim Budesheim. In fourth place is a guy named Robin Strand, brand new guy.
I never heard of him. I never heard
Well,
of
now
him
you
before.
have. He's in fourth place here at Toronto, but not a bad debut for our gentleman this go round. And I mean, he didn't hit any of the early shows. At least I didn't see his name in any of the
Yeah.
early shows. So we'll hope he continues on. It's the top three that really gets most of the juice this show. John Jewett, who used to be a 212 guy, known for his conditioning, moved up to the open and has done fairly well in that that open division. He didn't fare as well here, just kind of getting overpowered by the next two guys we're going to talk about. But he's very consistent. The only thing that's a little strange with John is when he brings his arms up, his chest seems to flatten out. I'm not quite sure what goes on there, but I did notice it in his front double bi in particular.
Yeah, there's a couple of poses he could work a little bit harder on to stand out a little bit more. But I think he was in a solid third. He wasn't going to be second, and I don't think he was going to be fourth. So I think the judges got that placement right.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. He was rewarded. He was in good condition. He's been in better condition. His hallmark was getting razor sharp. Now you're
Yeah.
going to give up a little bit of that when you move it up to open to compete in the open with the big boys. But I don't think he sacrificed that much of it. I don't think you need to be peeled to the bone, in order to have a good and pleasant physique out there. But he presents himself very well.
Yeah, no, I mean, he deserved to be in that conversation.
Well, the top two were pretty much the top two from the get go. And personally, Quinton, I think, reestablished himself. He needed this show probably more mentally than physically because of that debacle in New York where he showed up, much to my chagrin of picking him to pull an upset. He was lucky to place in the top 10, but he was so bad. I mean, he was so depleted and just so wasted away. It looked like he dropped 25 pounds of muscle in New
Yeah,
York, and I think everybody's jaw was on the ground.
we saw Roy Littlemeyer do that back at the Nationals. Remember, he started at 305, and
Yeah,
he weighed
yeah,
in. I think he was like 209 pounds. I
that's
mean,
right.
literally overdid it in the head.
Well, you'll like this one, Shawn. This is right up your alley. But it was right after that there was some back and forth between him and his trainer. It looked like everything was kind of cool. The trainer said, hey, listen, stuff happens. We'll continue to work, blah, blah, blah. And Quinton seemed okay. And then all of a sudden, the whole thing kind of blew up. And Quinton comes out and he says, look, I ain't using any more trainers. Okay, I'm going to be on my own. I know my body. I know what I need to do. And I got to give him props, man. He probably would have, should have, maybe could have won this show from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and I love a person that takes control of their career because that's what I did my entire career. I don't think it's rocket science. You don't have any fingers to point. And sometimes relying on yourself removes the plan B. It's nice, back in the day, we didn't have trainers. We had training partners. We had guys that would go to the gym and actually sweat with us and train with us and give us their opinion because they've been there before. They were on that stage. They know what it's like to train on low carbs and do all this cardio and have the pressure of the judges and the weight of the contest. Those are guys I could appreciate their opinion and their input. So I love it when a guy says, you know what, I'm going to do it my own way and either I sink or I swim. I think that might have given him a little bit more motivation by cutting ties. And, he looked a lot better. There's no question he looked better. But again, being so tall, he's going to be a work in progress. He's going to make
Sure.
those mistakes he's going to make the mistakes right in front of us on these big stages. And it's going to take some time. Remember, Ronnie Coleman didn't win his first Olympia or his second or his third or his fourth or
Right.
his fifth for that matter.
Right.
And he was getting beat by everybody from Dexter to me and Kevin. Everybody was taking turns beating Ronnie, but eventually the muscle came and he found his stride. And that may happen with Quinton. And we're going to hear this. He's going to win one of these obscure shows, and it's not going to be a big deal. And then next thing you know, he's in the Olympia standing next to the best in the world. I think it was a good move by taking control. And I'm sure he's going to continue to make some mistakes and experiment because he has so much volume to deal with. He'll be a work in progress. The biggest thing he's going to have to control is the mind, so he doesn't
Yeah.
do what he did, so he doesn't repeat what he did before, which is come up and drop really fast.
Well, this was huge. And again, more mentally than physically. Physically, yes, he had to get back to where he was. I would have been very curious to see where Big Q would have put in New York had he looked like this. I still don't think he beats the top two, but I certainly think he could have been fighting for a solid third place in New York.
He's got all the attributes, but again, you're only as good as the guys you stand next to, and you can't win unless you compete in the show. He chose this one, and we're talking about Akim, whichever how we want to pronounce it.
Akim?
Um, yeah, he's not Mr. Consistency, but he continues to find the right show to get back to the big dance. I remember, I think he win. He won the Chicago Pro in Atlanta one year, during like one of those COVID years, I think it
He
was.
finds his way back to the Olympia. Akeem is a
Yeah,
guy who is, listen, he's got a lot of muscle. He presents himself fairly well. He needs some work in his presentation still. From the side, he can hang with anybody in the world. And I mean the
yeah.
world. Okay? There's not a bodybuilder from the side he can't stand next to and hold his own, if not beat him. The problem is the front and the back, and particularly the
The
back.
back. Yes, the
And
back.
even though you and I weren't there in person, and again, there's only so much you can see with video and pictures, both of us have talked to people who actually were there. They were there in the front row watching right behind the judges. And I got to be honest, I've heard as many people having Quint in first place than had Akeem in first place. From what it sounded like, and a lot of people thought that Quinton should have won over Akeem, but I can see that with those front and back poses. Akeem from the side can compete with anybody. He can stand with the best in the world and beat most of those people from the side. It's from the front and the back that it gets a little watery, and from the back, it's still a weak point for him. As good as he is from the side, he's not that sharp from the front and the back. But that's where I thought Quinton might have had him, is in those front and back shots. Many people had Quinton winning the show.
Well, we're conditioned also historically that contests are won from the back. So when you see a guy with a subpar back like Akim win a contest over a guy that's got a better back, we're left scratching our head because we're conditioned that usually the back shots are lights out. That's where these guys win these contests. But he's got so much muscle, and
Yeah,
there's so much more for Quinton to overcome besides just the back double bicep and the front double bicep. I mean, Akim, if he's gonna go back to the Olympia, he doesn't have the time to fix the back, and he's going to be exposed when he gets to the Olympia. But sometimes the victory for some bodybuilders is just getting to the Olympia where they never thought they would ever be. And Akim has
sure.
his own personal goals and strategies for what's going to happen come the Olympia. But I think Quinton still has time on the clock to actually get a qualification to get to the Olympia. Again, we go back before the New York Pro Show where I recommended that he goes on from New York to Toronto and maybe even
Yeah,
possibly over to Dubai, maybe tech. He just has to keep going. His number may come up, but he also may run into some Mack trucks that aren't qualified, like maybe an Andrew Jack or somebody that's
sure.
out there. But who cares? You're going to see him at the Olympia if you qualify anyways.
Well,
Aka is exactly where he probably predicted he would be. He found the right show at the right time. He can shut it down. go to the Olympia and try to improve on his last placement. With Quinton, I'm not shutting it down until I get there. He might as well keep going. Why not?
Well, this brings up a great point counterpoint. I can see two different paths here for Quinton. One, okay, he reestablished himself. We know New York was a complete debacle. He got himself back. We saw the Quinton that we were expecting, and he almost wins the show. In the second place, certainly nothing to be ashamed about, as Akim is a perennial top 10 Olympia guy. That said, okay, so if he keeps going, like you said, he needs a lot of muscle. For that frame, as much muscle as he has, he could use another 15, 20 pounds on that frame, and then he'd be really tough to beat by anybody. But he needs time to do that. So, once again, your coach, Shawn, which way do you push him, Shawn? Do you say, well, look, you've gone this far, you might as well put some money in your pocket and see what you can do? Or do you shut it down right now, knowing that even if you get to the Olympia, you're probably not going to be in the first couple call-outs, and you need the time to put that muscle on? So which way do you go, Coach Shawn?
I send him to Texas because he's already close to striking distance. It's not that far off. All right, he failed in New York. It went south. He made up for it in Toronto. Now let's see what happens on the third try. Why shut it down now and waste all this valuable time when it's not that far away? He has time to eat for the entire week and recover and jump right back on his horse and be ready for Texas if he so chooses. But I would want to see one more time what the peaking process would look like for me. And if I don't get to the Olympia in Texas, then maybe it might be time to take my foot off the gas, or I wind
Right.
up hanging on and go over to Dubai and take my chances there. It's only 2 weeks later.
And it's a big paycheck. Bader upping that prize money considerably this year. That's Bader Bodai for those that follow on the home version here. Quinton is a real interesting guy when it comes to his physique because we really don't know how much he's. Listen, from what I saw, he sacrificed a lot for New York. I don't think you get that back in a week or two. So, to your credit, we may not have even seen the best Quinton yet. This was a good way. Let's just say he came back 70% from where he was. That leaves another 30% that he could probably still get to. So you might see a better and bigger version of him as he goes, just because he lost so much muscle and roundness in that New York prep.
Well, we know sometimes when we suck down over a period of days and weeks and further on after a bodybuilding contest, and we fill up, we look better sometimes. We feel better too. So I'd like to see him continue on. You're a professional bodybuilder. Um, you're trying to make a name for yourself. Why not? I mean, he's got nothing to lose. You sit on the sidelines and wait. I think it's a mistake. I'd be in Texas and or Dubai, one or both if I was him.
Yeah, and they're both within striking distance. I mean, Dubai is at the end of July, which is coming up. Ain't nothing like Dubai in July, bro. This will be like the surface of the sun. But
Yeah, it's gonna be 120 degrees.
I'm gonna thank Bader for that one there. But so that brings us, to Akim Williams. Now, again, we've seen Akim up and we've seen him down. We've seen him bring his best, and we've seen him come in very soft. There's not a lot of room for error there for him. He literally has to be 100% to get his back in condition enough to contend against anybody else that's on stage, especially if they're a top Olympian. Just like you've got Hunter Labrada coming up. Like I said, you've got Andrew Jack. I mean, there's still some people that got to qualify here.
Well, look, I mean, we're talking about Akeem because he is an Olympian, and whether you like that look or not, it is something to behold in person. And on that Olympia stage, under those lights, against those guys, he created his own following. He's making a name for himself. When you get to the Olympia once, that kudos. That's almost like graduating college with your degree. But when you get there 2, 3, 4, 5 times, I mean, you've established yourself as one of the best bodybuilders in the world. And he's slowly but surely done that. And he's doing it by winning contests to get there. So he's a bona fide Olympian that belongs on that Olympia stage, regardless of how he places. He's got his own personal battles of trying to be better than what he once was. But I do know it landed him in the top 6 one year, and that's not without it. That's not beyond his reach of getting back there.
Well, I'm gonna put you back in the coach's corner, and you got Akeem Williams now. Is it genetic, or is it a training thing, or is there anything he can do to get his back to match his front?
No, it's not going to happen. It's like Paul Dillette. And mind you, Paul Dillette, I believe, was fourth place in one of those Olympias or fifth place in one of those Olympias. So even without a back, he got there. I mean, and let's
Yep.
not forget, Nasser El Somebody wasn't known for his back, but he got second in the Mr. Olympia. Um, I think uh, Akim falls within the realm of a guy kind of like Paul Dillette, where from the front we're just amazed, from the side we're just amazed. You turn around to the back, and everybody's taking shots at him. But he has enough of everything else that keeps him in the conversation of the group of guys that he could get back in that top six. That for me would be the goal if I'm Akim. I'm not. I mean, he's heard a million times about his back. I mean, I think same way
Yeah.
with some of the other bodybuilders. I'm sure Mike Matarazzo was told, "Hey, your calves are big enough.
Right.
You know, like back off the quads. You know, Quadzilla." Um, there's really not a whole lot that he's gonna do. His back is what it is. We've probably seen the best of it because he's not a spring chicken. I think he's on the north side of 35, not on the south side of 35 in terms of age. So I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of changes on the back. It is what it is. The judges have seen him throughout the years and throughout his career. These are not new judges getting a fresh look at Akim. They know what he's going to look like on that stage, what he's going to look like when he turns around to the rear. But he's been in that top six before, and that would be the goal if I'm Akim, is just to try to get back in that top six.
Shawn, let me ask you this again. Every expert I talked to, people that were actually there on the scene, um, I would say it was a good 60-40 that actually had Quinton winning, which is interesting. And again, not to say again, we weren't there. So we always got to, take that position of, well, listen, we weren't there. Okay. All we can do is listen to what people say and check out the video and what pictures we can get our hands on. But what I wonder though is with the last two shows, is less emphasis being put on symmetry, proportion, shape, aesthetics because of the addition of classic physique.
Yeah, I don't know the rhyme or the reason because I heard the same thing that Quentin should have won. And this, again, it's a weird position as an athlete to come off that stage in second place and have the majority of the people tell you should have won. I've been there a couple of times. Can't change it because the decision in the verdict is final. Quentin doesn't have to scratch his head. Sometimes you just gotta, you got to take it and use it as fuel for the next show. But I'm not sure what the judges are doing with regards to how they're arriving at the number one pick, and it's such a stark contrast with the majority of the fans. But we see explanations after the show from judges why someone should win or why someone got second. Unless you're there in person, we're Monday morning quarterbacking, right? We weren't there. We're hearing the reviews. This was Quentin's home country of Canada.
True
Um,
that.
he's got the majority of the fans in the house looking for the next big thing coming out of Canada. Who, by the way, who was the last big thing besides C-Bum coming out of Canada?
I was just going to say, CBum's about as big as they get, buddy. So,
Yeah. So they're looking for that next big thing coming out of Canada. So it's a disappointment when you get this close and you're representing a country and Akim's going into, the enemy territory. It's not going to be a popular choice to win any more than Dorian coming over here to America and taking the title back to England every year. So it does set up the stage for the Olympia where the pressure's on the judges in terms of where they're going to put these different looking physiques because they're all different. Akim is no Nick Walker, and Nick Walker is no Hadi Chupin. They're also different. Derek Lunsford. I don't want to be in that inevitable position of having to choose the winner. I know what I like. Quentin's more along the lines. Martin Fitzwater's more along the lines than Nick Walker is, and more than Akim is. So we have our personal likings. It's not always the popular decision, but the judges are deciding which direction our sport's going.
well, interestingly, this kind of paired up to me very similar. You had Nick and Fitzwater.
Yeah,
Okay, so you had the freak versus the guy who maybe doesn't have as much muscle, certainly put together better, does have better shape, symmetry, proportion, but is lacking a little bit in the thickness and muscularity category. So you can see both ways there. I
sure.
see this as very much the same as you've got Quinton and Akim. Akim, much more heavily muscled, very thick, not as aesthetically put together. Historically, has had trouble keeping the midsection under control. Looks like he did a little bit better with that this competition. It doesn't present his physique probably as well as he can. as opposed to Quinton, who, again, much more streamlined. Yes, he can use a little bit more muscle. Yes, his back is a little deficient when it comes to overall muscularity because he's tall. So I get the give and the take of this. But like you said, it sets up an interesting dichotomy of, okay, which way are we going here?
Yeah.
But I can't help wonder if again, when you have a classic physique division, if that sets a certain path, that maybe this goes a completely different way.
Well, again, when you have the same judges that judge the classic physique, that also judge the open bodybuilding, the lines are going to get blurred. Very similar when you have the bikini girls being judged by the same people judging the wellness. I mean, it's very hard to draw the distinction between what it is. The more divisions we have, the more confusing the results are going to be. At the end of the day, they got to get that shit right at the Olympia because that's the hallmark. That sets the standard. These shows that we see on the smaller scale, it just creates the debate, doesn't it? I mean, because you have the popular guy, you have the muscular guy, you have the classical guy, and then you have to figure out who's going to win. There could be only one champion. On paper, going into this show, I would have thought that Quinton has, if he improved on everything he had in New York, had a better physique that would take over a physique like Akim, just because there's more things that are in sync, in symmetrical, and in detail, especially from the rear. Whereas Akim's this big, muscular, chunky guy, but again, he's got the thick skin and he's got the subpar back. But hey, that's what the judges liked. I wasn't in agreement with it.
Yeah, well,
I thought Quinton had the better physique.
yeah, it certainly sets up for an interesting Olympia because you've got the haves and the have-nots. Right? You've got freaks and you've got aesthetically pleasing people. Now, the obvious answer is in the middle, right? You want a Lee Haney. You want a guy who, for that time, was considered a freak when it came to muscularity. I remember when he weighed in at 255. That was like so unheard of back then. And he was over 250. I remember that like it was yesterday. I was like, oh my God, like he weighed in at how much? Like that was crazy.
Yeah, and now
So,
you got guys like, Derek Lunsford coming in at 245, right? He's 5'6".
so
So
well,
we only have that to compare it to because we lived it. We saw, like, holy crap, the guy's 5'10", 255, and he's like the only guy that was carrying that kind of weight. Now we got guys at 5'6" carrying that kind of weight.
well, it's crazy. Speaking of which, did you catch any of the Tarek El Guinea's Olympia piece that he put out with we had Derek, you had Nick and Samson, and these guys were tearing it up in Arizona at a gym with a workout. But big shout out to our counterpart there, Tarek El Guinea, putting out some content out there for the Olympia. But did you happen to catch any of that, Shawn?
I saw about a few minutes of it. For me, it wasn't inspiring or motivating because I come from a different production background. I talked to Dennis James on the Minute Show, and he agrees with me that there could have been a lot more to it. I think the concept was nice, bring
Sure.
these guys in. I didn't like all the cell phone video guys. I didn't like the fact that Chris Cormier was in the shot spotting world-class bodybuilders on their first rep. That was a little bit confusing. I would have liked to see a little bit more engagement of the bodybuilders that had they been a little bit more actually training or either instructional that we could, glean a little bit more into their styles. I didn't get the
Sure.
styles of, they don't have to go in there and lift their maximums, but I would have rather either seen a workout or an instructional, not like a bunch of cheerleaders. Chris was in the shops all the time, kind of helping them. They're doing flies with weight that you and I could do on our first set. We don't need Chris spotting us and taking up all the camera. And then we had all these cell phone cameras going. So a lot to be desired on the production. I think if they continued that route, they could definitely get a little bit more mileage out of it where we could stay engaged and take something back to the gym with us. But the concept was there. The concept was
Well,
there. I hope they keep doing it so they
yeah.
get it right.
Yeah, I mean, listen, any insight into these guys, prepping for the Olympia? In the old days, we had the road to the Olympia with Matsuru, Okabe. What I like better about the old days version was that it was in your backyard. They came to you in your backyard, your gym that you trained at, with your equipment, your house, your food, your schedule, your day in the life of whoever
I
that
prefer
was.
to see that. Yeah, I would prefer to see that. But since we've seen it, we have
Yeah,
that as our yardstick. We have that as our measuring. So to see something that's kind of trying to do the same thing in a different way. It just didn't resonate with me.
Well, in the part that I caught, because again, I'm on the road in Italy, so I'm trying to catch up, keep up on all this stuff. But in the part I caught, it was kind of a good and a bad thing, a little scary at one point. So they're training chest, they're on a chest press, and I think it's a max pump piece of equipment, right? Not to talk about the opposition, Shawn, but hey, I'm a Panada guy, right?
But
And I'll be damned, they warm up, they throw a couple. So Samson gets on. He's got like 5 cleats on each side of that thing, which isn't crazy. I mean, it's good heavy weight, but on his third rep or so, the thing breaks. Boom, right? You just see one arm kind of go up and the other one come down. And all I could think of is, holy crap, I hope he didn't just tear a pec or something.
yeah,
This is where it gets a little, it was kind of funny to me because it was like, should have used Panada equipment, ha ha kind of thing. Then I thought, if this guy just tore a pec, his career is over.
yeah, yeah, kind of scary. I mean, listen, I would rather see some demonstrative, real training. But when you randomly throw in a piece of equipment, you better know, test the metal before you do it, right? Like, these are careers we're talking about, not only careers, but world best. Um,
Right?
that wouldn't have been a good look. So they've got to learn from their mistakes. Hopefully, we'll never see something like that again. I do remember at the Olympia one year, they brought out a power lifter, Bob, to start the show off. I think this
Oh,
was back
I
when I
was
think you
there.
were just coming in. Yeah,
I
the
was
guy
there.
went out there, he tore a pec.
Bro,
It's a scary
he did,
situation.
no, he almost killed himself. He didn't just
Yeah,
tear a pec. Listen, he tore us. That was, what's his name? Gene Rachlick, I believe his name was. And I believe he's passed away since then. I hope, if I'm wrong on that, please somebody correct me, but just a couple of years ago. But no, first of all, that was a horrible idea. For
yeah,
anybody that was there at the time, you don't ever open up first of all, I didn't like the idea of opening up a bodybuilding show with a bench press
powerlifting.
record. I mean, it had nothing to do. I remember Peter McGuff, rest his soul, talking about this, and he was not a big fan of this, but
Yeah,
nobody considered the obvious, which was, well, this is great if he makes it. But what if he doesn't, right? And,
yeah,
you kind of start the show off with a dud, right? But it was even worse. He ended up coming down, and I don't know if he slipped the grip or what. The bar fell. It was like 1,000 pounds. It was something stupid,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it actually did damage. He tore a pec. He lacerated his
Liver.
kidney or something, or his spleen or something. He was down for a while. Like, so here the show starts, and he's down. It's off to the side, and this was the year before
Show must go on.
well,
Yeah,
this is I think it was the year before you and I took the microphone. It was Triple H and Mike Adamle that was
yeah,
out there, and they're trying to get confirmation if he's okay. But there's 20 people around him, and first of all, they had to get this bar off him. It literally fell on him, like his ribs. I don't know if he broke a few. He did, like, his rib punctured his spleen or something of
yeah. It
that
was
nature.
bad.
This
Yeah.
was not good, bro. But it was a terrible start. Okay, folks, here we go. But and
Yeah, well, when I watch these guys in this, it's interesting to see that high level caliber bodybuilders together. I think there were too many people in the room. I think there were a lot of people that were in the way. I don't think there was a real good takeaway that we learned anything, and the moderation of what it is they're doing and why they're doing it. There was no real personal touch to it, but again, the attempt was there. I hope they attempted a few more times and kind of sharpen the pencil, and get rid of all the extra fanfare, and the production has to be a little bit more cleaner, I think.
bring back the challenge round, bro.
Yeah. Well, we don't need to we don't need to reinvent the wheel, but
No.
we have the talent and the media mechanisms to really get some eyeballs on our sport and get a closer look at who we're dealing with. And I would like to see kind of like the road to the Olympia brought back, where we get to see an inner glimpse of how these guys are living. Look, I mean, I think, is Derek a new father right now? Um, and Samson lives and trains over in England, and Nick Walker relocated to Las Vegas. There's some stories behind there that we could have gone a little bit further into to see, like a day in the life, and then see them in the gym, and then maybe
Sure.
if they're all in the same place, yeah, they don't have to do maximums, but let's get in the gym and spar, man. There was just too much background noise going on that video shoot.
Well, like I said, we do appreciate the effort. Tarek's doing a great job and the crew over there, but I wouldn't mind seeing, maybe, listen, they can always change and do different formats.
Yeah,
The cool thing is we're going to get to see these guys that are going to be on the Olympia stage fighting for Joe Weider's 60th Olympia. Shawn, we're celebrating 60 years of excellence. You were on stage for many of those years, of course, and I only graced the stage once, but it was enough to get my ass out there with the best in the world and Joe
what year
Weider
was
and all
that?
that stuff.
What year were you there?
2002, bro. I narrowly missed out beating Marcus Rule, a contest that's still in Germany at least is ranks number one, bro, amongst my popularity.
Yeah,
Bigger than Hasselhoff, I am, bro, in
okay.
Germany to this
That's
day.
the year after I retired from bodybuilding. But I think, again, we talk about these guys qualifying for the Olympia almost kind of nonchalantly. It's a big freaking deal when you're a
Of
part of the
course.
Olympia weekend. And it's even bigger celebrating 60 years because there's a lot of moving parts that are going to be going on at the Resort World. I saw that online. I think there's an announcement. Tickets went on sale today, I believe it is, on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
MrOlympia.com. You can get that information. Resort World, and there, it's surrounded. Just a couple of tidbits. Resort World is the host hotel. It
Correct.
sits locationally. It sits very near to the brand new Fontainebleau Hotel, very close to the Wynn, across from the Trump International, and right next to the Fashion Show Mall for geography. If you want to know where the Resort World is, there's three
Mhm.
hotels in one. You have the Hilton, you have the Conrad, and then there's the Crockford or something like that. There's three of them. Big facility. They're all Hilton properties. And there's a lot of little subsidiary hotels in and around. Mind you, this is taking place October 8th to the 13th. And during that time, the strip's going to be under construction for the Formula One coming in the month of November. And it is not, the expo is not at the same expo it was last year, which was the Venetian
Yeah, I think it's
Expo.
back at the LVCC, correct?
That's right, off of Paradise. Okay, so people need to know where that expo is. There, as far as my understanding is, there's some underground transportation.
Yeah.
But you need to look into that pre-travel about the logistics of getting around from the Resort World where the contest is to the expo, which is not the Venetian Expo. It is the Las Vegas Expo.
Well, what
To,
I'd like to remind people of is listen, it's a theater setup, so tickets are going to be gone fairly quickly, but there'll be other provisions that I believe they're working on now. You've got pay-per-view options, but there's so much more to the Olympia weekend. That's why we call it the weekend. The Olympia experience is what we call the weekend because there's so many other things going on. There's the Meet the Olympians, there's the press conference, there's the Sunday seminar, there's all the events in between, the expo. So there are lots of things going on that you can meet and greet. This year with the 60th, I was expecting it would be a who's who of bodybuilding history, Shawn, with some of the greatest of all time there in attendance. Speaking of which, Shawn, I'd be remiss if we didn't cover our Olympia history segment this time. We left off last time, 65 and 66, as we know. Larry Scott started it all, your first two-time champ. He hung him up, boom, he was gone. Then it was Sergio, 67, 68, and 69. No question about it. Nobody even came close. The myth brought all he could bring. He was in prime time. That brings us to 1970. This was interesting, Shawn, because it was Arnold that would actually beat the great Sergio Oliva, a guy named Reg Lewis in a distant third place. But what were your feelings on Arnold beating Sergio? A lot of speculation still to this day. Sergio should have beaten Arnold in 70. Your thoughts?
well, I mean, what's Olympia without controversy, right?
Of course, right?
There's a couple of years that stand out with asterisks next to it because hard to convince the person that's there in person. I'm not so sure how many people were actually there to witness this controversy. Sergio was in his prime, and Arnold couldn't have been 21 or 22 years old.
Right?
I mean, we're talking
Yeah,
about baby Arnold. We're not talking about mature Arnold of 75. We're
right.
talking about baby Arnold of 71. 74 he was really good too, by the way.
Yeah,
Um,
arguably 73 and 74. I don't think, I think it's pretty universal. At 74, this guy was incredible.
yeah, so that's why I'm saying it leads me to in 70 beating Sergio. We're talking about he beat a grown man and he
Yeah,
wasn't Arnold was barely a young man at the time. So there's a difference in looking at that muscularity, right? Like that muscle
sure.
maturity. It counts for something that only time and age can bring you. And I'm not sure how far apart they were age wise, but Sergio looked like an adult against a young man.
Sure. I think Sergio had a few years on him. Like you said, his physique was simply incredible. That's why they called him the myth. But it was Arnold, who did take it in 1970. And these two, you were hoping this was going to be a battle royal for the next 3, 4, 5 years with these two. This is Ali Frazier, bro, in the world of
Yeah.
bodybuilding. By the way, on a side note, 1970 was the year that they used predominantly in the movie Bigger. That came out a few years ago about the story of Joe Weider and Ben formulating the Federation and all that. And we actually recreated the 1970 stage. So I was actually able to take part in that, more on the producer end of telling them how it would have worked back then, and the competition itself. Allegedly, that was the show that Arnold played the trick on Sergio and telling him that he was tired. Okay, we posed enough. Let's come on, let's get out of here. And Sergio starts walking off stage, and then Arnold kind of takes a few steps and then comes back, and then he's looking like, where's he going? He's giving up.
He quit.
Look
He quit.
he don't want no part of me.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
unfortunately, 1971 would come, and there was no rematch. Matter of fact, there wasn't anybody competing. 1971, Arnold wins the Olympia uncontested.
Well, again, you can't win unless you show up. And I say that today. So I saw one of the women bodybuilders from the Wings of Strength competed over the weekend, and the pictures weren't good. Her
Right.
physique wasn't good. She was really smooth, a little watery. Didn't look like the professional bodybuilders we're used to looking at. But there she was, wearing the sash and the crown, and she was the winner. You can only win if you show up to compete. So we can't fault Arnold if other people have their reasons for not competing, whether it's boycotting or whether it's they know who they're going up against. I mean, it's Arnold, and they knew what Arnold looked like. So why get ready to suffer for a show to go be a pace car on a racetrack?
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on back then in the world of bodybuilding by terms of quote politics,
Sure, there were other divisions,
different federations, right? There was
Yeah.
Dan Lurie, Bob Hoffman, all these other federations started kind of popping up, and people
Sure.
didn't take kindly to Arnold beating Sergio, right, and all that.
Yeah. And
So
people
I'm sure
probably were told not to compete. People were probably told not to compete. It's a very influential industry back then. You followed the lead. Like,
Yeah.
we have a lot of independents here. Independent thinkers do what they want to do. But back then, people were afraid to do this, were told to do that. But again, Arnold showed up to compete. Nobody else there. You got to give him the award. Just like the Olympia this year. Just because you qualify for the Olympia doesn't mean you have to go. So
True
my
that.
goal is to go to the Olympia and I qualify, and then I realize who's on the roster and why am I going to suffer and do all of these things
Right.
only to be served up to the Lions. I might sit out. And we know some people that are qualified for the Olympia that don't go to the Olympia for that very reason. They know they'll never get the time back. They don't need the experience. They're not going to make the money, so they choose not to go. Back then, you had fewer athletes, fewer guys that had the belief that they could beat someone like Arnold, and that's why he winds up on the stage by himself. But he at least went and got the title.
Well, he did. Put 1970, 71 in his pocket. And interestingly enough, just 1 year later, the 1972 Olympia would be one of the best ones of all time. So seemingly all was forgiven, whether that was through Joe's efforts or anybody else's. But in just a year's turnaround, you had Arnold, Sergio, Serge Nubret, Zane, and Franco. All in the 1972 Olympia. Arnold once again would come out on top over Sergio. That would pretty much end Sergio's career, at least in the IFBB. Serge Nubret, it's interesting, Shawn, we're talking earlier about the great bodybuilders of today and how when he turns around, something's lost and all that. Nobody lost more turning around than Serge Nubret did.
Yeah, he just didn't have the back, didn't have the hamstrings, didn't have the calves. A lot of things he didn't have, but it's crazy when I think of Serge, which was my mentor, John Brown's mentor. I never think about those things he didn't have because the things he did have were so impressive that I can only remember that washboard abs, the tiny little waist, the symmetry when he did his side tricep and his little one arm most muscular shot. I mean, they called him the Panther. I mean, he just the ebb and the flow of his physique. You kind of forgot that he didn't have a back. You forgot he didn't have hamstrings.
Well,
You
let
didn't care
me
if he had
ask you
calves.
this. Was there anybody better at just standing there than Serge
Relax.
Nubret?
Yeah,
if there was a Mr. Olympia for standing there,
yeah.
bro, you couldn't beat this guy. When that picture, Rudy Panada of the famed Panada equipment. Yes, there's an actual person named Rudy Panada. Okay, he's got a home gym. It's a who's who of pictures and his experiences, and been around a long time. He's got a few different pictures of Serge Nubret, and he's standing there in that half sideways relaxed pose with the
muscular pose.
pecs, right, and the abs. That's it, and the leg.
Iconic.
bro, it's like you can't beat that.
No. And again, bodybuilding is more than the standing relaxed, right? But back then, he was exemplary art. Remember this one with Steve Reeves where he has his hands up like this
Yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah.
clouds?
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, there's some iconic photographs coming up when we started that are still iconic today. And that photograph that you're talking about, Sergey Bray, would have to be in the commentary.
Well, Shawn, that was 1972, and the rest we'll get into as we continue our coverage of the 60 years of excellence at the Olympia stage. So that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Voice of Bodybuilding. For Sugar Shawn Ray, I'm Bob Chick. We'll see everybody next week.